After spending 5 years stuck indoors with her strict Aunt Diet, a little orphan girl named Heidi is finally heading to the Swiss Alps to live with her grandfather. Diet has found a job in Frankfurt and can't take Heidi with her, so she ignores the villagers' warnings that the old man is grumpy and possibly dangerous. As they climb the mountain, Heidi ditches her shoes and dress, running freely in just her underclothes, loving the fresh air and freedom. But when they arrive, her grandfather, Heidier, is furious. He immediately tells Diet to take the child away because he has no interest in raising her. Diet pretends to leave with Heidi, but instead, she sneaks the little girl behind the house and runs off. Heidier realizes the trick and yells after her, but Heidi calmly tells him she doesn't want to go either. Still refusing to take her in, Heidier locks himself inside, leaving Heidi to sleep in the barn with the goats. The next morning, without a word, Heidier gives Heidi fresh goat milk for breakfast and takes her to church. The priest sees Heidi is strong and healthy and tells Heidier he should take responsibility for his own granddaughter, but the old man refuses. So, the priest announces he'll be traveling to Mayenfeld in 3 days. If Heidier won't care for Heidi, perhaps a local farmer will take her in. Back at the cabin, Heidi wonders if she should sleep in the barn again, but Heidier shrugs and says she can sleep wherever she wants. With only one bed and one chair inside, Heidi explores and finds a cozy attic filled with hay. She happily claims it as her bedroom. That night, she quietly tells Heidier she doesn't want to leave. He says nothing. The next day, Peter, the goat herd, comes by to take Heidier's goats up the mountain. Seeing this as a great chance for Heidi to explore, Heidier asks Peter to take her along and teach her a thing or two. He packs her a lunch of cheese and sausage, and Heidi excitedly joins Peter, thrilled to be outside instead of stuck indoors like she was with her aunt. As Heidi runs around happily with the goats, Peter sneaks a bite of her food. When Heidi catches him, he quickly blames the goats. Suddenly, 2 goats start fighting, and Peter tries to break them up by hitting them with a stick. Heidi doesn't like this at all and makes him stop. She then offers a deal. If Peter promises never to hit a goat again, she'll share half of her lunch with him every day. Peter agrees, but warns her not to tell Heidier, because people in town say he once killed someone. That evening, when Heidi returns home, she acts strangely around her grandfather and even says she'll sleep in the barn. Heidier immediately realizes she's heard the rumors. Instead of getting upset, he asks her, "Will you trust more, gossip, or your own eyes and ears?" Heidi chooses to believe in him, hugs him tightly, and decides to sleep in the attic instead. The next day, while Heidi spends time with Peter, Heidier secretly works on a special surprise. When she returns home, she finds an extra chair at the table. Then, he gives her the best news ever. She can stay with him for good. Over the following weeks, Heidi and Peter spend every day together, playing and exploring. She even cuts her hair short to make running around easier. One day, Peter tells Heidi he won't be around for a few months because he's going to school. He promises they'll see each other again in the spring and invites her to visit his house. Hearing this, Heidi also wishes she could go to school. The townspeople often remind Heidier that children need education and friends, but he refuses, saying winter will make it impossible for her to travel down the mountain. As snow covers the land, life becomes dull. To cheer Heidi up, Heidier carves a tiny wooden bird for her, but it doesn't help much. Seeing her still sad, he decides to try something bigger. He starts building sleigh. Heidier and Heidi have a great time sledding down the mountain before he drops her off at Peter's house for a playdate. Heidi meets Peter's mother and his blind grandmother, but she learns that Peter's father has passed away. The grandmother struggles to eat because she has lost most of her teeth, and all they have is stale bread. Peter doesn't do well in school, and doesn't see the point of learning to read since he only needs to herd goats. However, his mother insists he must keep studying. When Heidier picks Heidi up, she tells him she feels lucky to have him. She spends happy years with her grandfather, enjoying a peaceful life in the mountains. But one day, Diet returns, saying she's found a good home for Heidi where she can make friends and go to school. Heidier refuses, pointing out that Diet never cared about Heidi before. Embarrassed, Diet insists she had no choice when she left Heidi in the past. When she realizes she can't change Heidier's mind, Diet tricks him by pretending to leave, only to sneak up the mountain and find Heidi among the goats. She tells Heidi that her grandfather actually wants her to go because he wants the best for her. Confused and upset, Heidi allows Diet to take her away. Peter witnesses everything but doesn't stop them. When he returns the goats, Heidier quickly realizes Heidi is missing. He rushes down the mountain to town, but he's too late. Diet is already gone with Heidi. The townspeople mock him for losing her. Heidi arrives in Frankfurt at the Grand CC mansion, where she meets the butler, Sebastian, the maid, Tanette, and the strict governess, Rottenmeier. Rottenmeier is immediately displeased, calling Heidi a wild child with no manners. But Diet reminds her that this is exactly what they wanted, an unspoiled child to befriend their daughter, Clara. Dee takes her payment and leaves, while Heidi meets Clara, who is wheelchair-bound. The two girls become instant friends. Later, when Heidi accidentally pushes Clara's wheelchair against a table, Clara takes the blame to protect her, telling Rottenmeier it was her fault. Heidi has a lot to learn before she can be accepted as Clara's companion. First, they clean her up, dress her in proper clothes, and give her boots. She's also taught table manners, and forbidden from running around or being too loud. On top of that, she must take lessons with Clara. Everyone is shocked when Heidi admits she can't read. Rottenmeier wants to send her away, but she has to wait until Clara's father returns. Until then, the instructor must teach Heidi to read while keeping up with Clara's studies. Despite following the house rules, Heidi stays true to herself. She still loves nature more than fancy rooms, dreams of the mountains every night, and secretly stuffs bread rolls in her pockets whenever she can. Over time, she and Clara grow close. Clara opens up, sharing that after her mother passed away, she became so till she lost the ability to walk. Before Heidi arrived, she felt lonely and trapped, especially with her father always away on business. One afternoon, Heidi refuses to take her daily nap and asks Sebastian to open a window, but she's disappointed. She still can't see the mountains. Sebastian explains that to see them, she'd have to climb the tallest tower in the city. Determined, Heidi sneaks Clara out of the house and takes her on an adventure around town. Since Clara is never allowed outside, this is a thrilling experience for her. When they find the city tower, Clara waits outside while Heidi climbs as high as possible. But even from the top, the mountains are nowhere in sight. Meanwhile, Clara, left alone for the first time, feels nervous until she spots a man selling kittens. She immediately decides to buy them all. Back at home, Rottenmeier panics when she realizes the girls are missing and orders the servants to find them. It's Sebastian who finally spots them. Just in time, Clara hides the kittens under a blanket before he notices. When they return, Rottenmeier is furious and tries to scold him, but suddenly starts sneezing like crazy because of her allergies. The kittens, startled by the commotion, leap off Clara's lap. Rottenmeier screams and scrambles onto the furniture in fear. Everyone bursts into laughter. At dinner, as punishment, Heidi isn't allowed to eat. Instead, she's forced to stand in the corner, facing the wall, while everyone else enjoys their meal. Rottenmeier warns her that next time, she'll be sent to the cellar with the rats. Heidi refuses to accept this. After dinner, she gathers all the bread rolls she's been saving for Peter's grandmother and tries to leave. But Rottenmeier stops her, reminding Heidi how lucky she is to have fine clothes and an education. However, what truly breaks Heidi's heart is seeing Clara in tears, running to her room, disappointed. From that day on, Heidi's nightmares get worse, and Clara refuses to leave her room. Tinette, the maid, blames Heidi for Clara's illness. Feeling even guiltier, Heidi visits Clara. Once the doctor says she's better, she reassures her friend that she doesn't want to leave because she hates her. Clara understands but still doesn't want Heidi to go. She's the only friend she has. With Heidi back by her side, Clara finally leaves her room and attends classes again. But reading is still difficult for Heidi. A few days later, Clara's father, Mr. Cece Man, finally comes home, bringing grandmother Cece Man with him. Much to Rottenmeier's displeasure, Clara is thrilled to reunite with her family, and both Cecemans are eager to meet Heidi. Mr. Cece Man is pleased to see how much better Clara looks, believing his decision to bring Heidi into their home was the right one. But Rottenmeier tries to change his mind, complaining that Heidi is still wild and refuses to learn how to read. Grandmother Cece Man, however, decides to judge for herself. That evening, she reads Heidi a bedtime story but stops before finishing. She wants Heidi to read the rest. Heidi admits she can't read because Peter told her it was useless. Grandmother Cece Man gently tells her not to believe everything she hears. Since Heidi loves stories and is desperate to know how this one ends, she promises to try harder and practice more. The next day, Grandmother Cece Man tells her son that Heidi is a wonderful child who can learn to read with the right support. But she also sees that Heidi is unhappy. This house goes against everything she truly is. Mr. Cece Man doesn't want to let Heidi go because she makes Clara happy. But Grandmother Cece Man sees the truth. He really wants Heidi to stay because she eases his guilt about leaving Clara alone so often. Meanwhile, strange things start happening at night. Mysterious noises echo through the house, and sometimes the front door is found open. The servants and even Rottenmeier whisper about ghosts, but Mr. Cece Man refuses to believe in such things. As the days pass, Heidi keeps practicing her reading with the book Grandmother Cece Man gave her. Eventually, she manages to read an entire story to everyone. The teacher takes all the credit, and Mr. Cece Man decides this proves Heidi is smart enough to stay in the house permanently. Clara is overjoyed, but Heidi is miserable. Every night, she cries herself to sleep. One evening, After Grandmother CC Man has returned to her home, Mr. CC Man and the doctor are playing chess when they suddenly hear the earring noises again. This time they decide to investigate. Armed with guns, they expect to find burglars, but what they discover shocks them. It's Heidi. She's sleepwalking. Every night, she comes downstairs, opens the front door, and stares into the distance before going back to bed, curling up like she used with the goats. The doctor checks on her and finds her shivering. As Mr. CC Man searches for a blanket, he stumbles upon a hidden stash of bread rolls Heidi had been saving. When Heidi wakes up, the doctor gently asks if she's in pain. She nods and says her chest hurts. Later, in private, the doctor tells Mr. CC Man that Heidi is severely homesick, so much so that it's affecting her health. She needs to go home. At first, Mr. CC Man refuses, but after a long, restless night, he remembers what happened to his wife and reconsiders. The next morning, when Clara asks about the ghost, her father tells her the truth. It was Heidi, sleepwalking because she's deeply unhappy, and that's why she must return home. Clara is devastated. She bursts into tears, screaming Heidi's name before running to her room in anguish. Heidi is thrilled to return her grandfather, Alpo High, but she still worries about Clara. She tries to talk to her, but Clara refuses to open the door. When it's finally time for Heidi to leave, the servants prepare a basket filled with bread rolls and other treats for her journey back to the mountains. Before leaving, Heidi gives Mr. CC Man her wooden bird and asks him to promise that Clara will visit one day. After Heidi is gone, Rottenmeier sighs in relief, thinking the house will finally be peaceful again. But Karma has other plans. There's still a kitten running around. As Rottenmeier panics, Tanette picks up the little cat and decides to name Heidi. As soon as Heidi arrives back in town, she kicks off her boots and rushes to find Peter. She visits his house to say hello and drop off some food, then races up the mountain. She ditches her fancy dress and finally reunites with her beloved grandfather. Life quickly returns to normal. She spends her days running through the hills and herding goats with Peter, but some things are different now. Heidi is finally allowed to go to school. In the winter, she and her grandfather move to a house in town along with the goats so she can attend classes. However, her new teacher is much stricter than Clara's, and misbehaving students sometimes get punished. When Heidi shares her dream of becoming a writer, her classmates laugh at her, but she does well in school. Unlike Peter, who still struggles with reading. Even with Heidi's help, Heidi writes letters to Clara, telling her all about her life in the mountains and how much she misses her. When Clara receives the letter, guilt washes over her. She never even said goodbye. Moved by Heidi's words, Grandmother CC Man gathers a group of servants and sets off to take Clara up the mountain. As the girls happily reunite, Grandmother CC Man sits down for a drink with Alpol and asks if Clara can stay for a few days. She even offers to pay, but Alpol kindly refuses, saying Clara is a guest. Now it's Heidi's turn to show her friend what life in the mountains is like. Clara starts wearing only her underdress, eats without utensils, pets the goats, sleeps on hay, and even sees a shooting star. The two girls spend all their time together, which makes Peter extremely jealous. Feeling left out, Peter refuses to join their fun. He goes herding alone because Clara, in her wheelchair, can't go up the mountain, and Heidi chooses to stay with her. One morning, Peter arrives before the girls wake up and spots Clara's wheelchair outside. Overcome with jealousy, he pushes it off a cliff and then runs off with the goats. When the family realizes the wheelchair is missing, Alpol immediately knows who's behind it. Without hesitation, he carries Clara on his back and, along with Heidi, follows the goat herding path. This way, Clara finally gets to see the rest of the mountains. Meanwhile, Alpol scolds Peter and makes him stay with the girls for the rest of the day. Clara is amazed by the breathtaking views, the colorful flowers, and a delicate butterfly that lands on her foot. When it flies away, she instinctively tries to catch it, shocking everyone by suddenly standing up. Walking is still difficult, but over the next few days, she practices with Heidi and even Peter, who now sees her in a different light after witnessing this miracle. When Grandmother CC Man returns with Clara's father, he is furious at first, believing his sick daughter should never have been brought to the mountains. But his anger vanishes when Clara walks toward him on her own 2 feet. Overwhelmed with joy, they share hugs and tears. Before leaving, Grandmother CC Man gives Heidi a notebook and a pen, encouraging her to write stories. She reminds Heidi to ignore anyone who tries to bring her down. Everyone should do what makes them happy. After saying a heartfelt goodbye to Clara, Heidi returns to her daily life with Peter. But now, she carries her notebook everywhere, writing a little each day.